Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. In today's video I'm going to be doing a video I've never done before actually, which is if you liked this romance then you'll love this one. And I'm really excited about this because I've been keeping track of these books for a long time to finally do this video. So let's just get right into it. So my first recommendation is for If You Liked The Deal by Elle Kennedy. This is obviously the first book in the Off-Campus series, which is a college hockey romance. And my book that you'll love if you like this one is called All the Way by Kendall Ryan. This is a very, very similar book to The Deal. Like, it's probably the closest book that I've ever read to The Deal. It deals with a lot of the same issues that Hannah and Garrett were sort of dealing with in their relationship. And it's also a hockey romance. The only difference is these ones are, like, this whole series is, they're out of college. They're not in college, but it's a very similar vibe. It's all hockey players. This one is also about a girl who has had some sort of past relationship issues that she's trying to get over, and she's sort of using this guy to do it. And that's sort of, you know, along the lines of what was going on with Hannah and Garrett. And I just found this book, like I said, it dealt with a lot of the same issues, and it's also a hockey romance, so it really reminded me of The Deal. So if you're looking for something that's similar, you'd probably really like this. I believe it's the second book in the Hot Jocks series by Kendall Ryan. There's a whole series of hockey player romances that this book is from, but like I said, this one specifically reminded me most of The Deal. Next is if you liked The Hating Game by Sally Thorne, you probably would love The Layover by Lacey Walden. This book, for me, was very similar. It made me sort of feel very much the same way as I felt when I read The Hating Game. They're both enemies to lovers, workplace romances, and in The Layover, the sort of interesting aspect of it versus The Hating Game is The Hating Game takes place, like, in an office, and The Layover is actually a story between two flight attendants. So they are, like, trapped on a plane together and then trapped in, like, the same hotel when they get to Belize and things. And they're sort of, it's very, like, tropical in this book. I really liked that part about it. They're always on the beach or whatever in this story. But I found their, like, banter and their, like, sort of things they go through in their relationship was very similar to The Hating Game. I found this one was, like, just as funny and just as cute. I laughed the whole time I was reading that book. But, like I said, these two are very, like, they gave me, like, very similar vibes. I will say The Layover is a little bit less steamy than The Hating Game. I don't actually know that they hook up in that book, unless I, like, missed it, which would have been weird. But I'm pretty sure they don't in that book, but there's, like, enough to, like, get you through, you know? But, like I said, it's really good, worth it, even without that factor going on, and I'm not usually one to say that. But just check this book out, trust me. This next one is for If You Liked Credence by Penelope Douglas, and I do feel like with this one I have to, like, say, if you read Credence and you were like, okay, this is the top of my level of, like, weird and crazy I'm willing to go in romances, then you will not like this book I'm about to recommend. But if you read Credence and you were like, yeah, okay, I could read more of that, or, like, I could go farther than they went in this book, I think you'll really like this next book, and it's called Coulter's Women by Maya Banks. I found this book just, like, randomly at my library by accident. And I'll be honest, I didn't totally read it. I, like, skimmed through most of it. But it reminded me so much of Credence. Everything in it is like Credence, but, like, amplified. And this one is basically about three brothers who live in this cabin in the woods, and this girl just, like, shows up in the snow. The oldest brother goes out and finds her, and he's like, oh my god, like, what are you doing? He takes her back to the cabin that they live in, and he's, like, helping her get warm and, like, getting her new clothes and whatever. And they are kind of, like, growing closer. Like, it's the middle of winter. She's kind of stranded there. I don't think she remembers her name or anything. And so she's sort of staying with them, and this oldest brother, is just, like, infatuated with her. Like, he's like, oh my god, she's, like, the most gorgeous woman I've ever seen. Like, I have to have her, basically. And then the second youngest, or the second oldest, I guess the middle brother, meets her, and he's like, oh my god, she's great, like, I love her, like, we need to get together and whatever. And then the youngest brother meets her, and he's like, yeah, she's great. And this girl is just, like, so confused because she, like, kisses the oldest brother, and then she'll be, like, kissing the middle brother somewhere else, and she's like, oh my god, I'm such a horrible person, like, I'm, like, going behind all these brothers' backs and whatever. And then one day she's finally like to one of the brothers, like, what would you say if I told you I was just kissing your brother, like, 5 minutes ago? And he's like, no, that's, like, chill, like, I'm good with that. And she doesn't know this, but these brothers always planned to marry the same woman. And this isn't like a spoiler, I'm pretty sure it literally says this on the book, but they've always planned to marry one woman. She doesn't know that, obviously, but like their parents did that. Like they have 3 dads and 1 mom and their grandparents, and so she is just like, well, okay, like this is a little weird, but like everything about this was like so Credence to me. Like it was, you know, up in the mountains in the snow, they couldn't go anywhere, they were kind of trapped in this house together with like the 3 guys and the 1 girl, and there's sort of like an underlying like suspenseful like theme going on, which was also some sort of going on in Credence. And so like the whole time I was reading this book, it just reminded me of Credence. And so I think if you liked Credence and you were like, yeah, okay, like I could do something a little bit crazier, then you'll love this book, because like I said, it's literally like Credence but amplified. Next is if you liked The Simple Wild by K.A. Tucker, then you'll like It Happened One Summer by Tessa Bailey. And I feel like everyone's gonna be like, what the heck when I say this one, but like hear me out for a second. I know these books are like not the same thing. Like It Happened One Summer is a rom-com and The Simple Wild is sort of got a more serious undertone to it, but I feel like at their core the story is very similar. They're both about a girl who moves to a small town that she is from but doesn't really remember. They both meet a grumpy guy who doesn't want anything to do with them. They both end up falling in love with that guy, and both guys have jobs that require them to leave all the time. And I was like, the whole vibe was just very like similar to me. Like in The Simple Wild, she goes to Alaska, she meets Jonah the pilot, and then she sort of gets annoyed later on that he keeps flying everywhere and he's gone for days, and she's always worried about him getting hurt and whatever. And in It Happened One Summer, he's a fisherman, he goes out onto the water for days at a time, and she's worried about him getting back and things. And they're both like sort of the enemies to lovers, kind of I'm forced to be here kind of thing going on. And I just found these were so similar. Like I said, obviously It Happened One Summer is a rom-com, The Simple Wild is not, but I feel like that was like, if you liked The Simple Wild, you would like this one, because the vibe is just so similar. Next is if you like People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry, you'll like Love in Other Words by Christina Lauren. These books are so similarly written. They're both friends to lovers who have like a falling out, and both are written the same way. So if you liked how It Happened One Summer was written, then you'll like this book, because both of them sort of start with a chapter in the present, and then they both go back like, okay, like summer 11 years ago, and then present, and then summer 10 years ago, and present, summer, whatever. And both of these books do that. They bounce back and forth between the present and the past, and both of them are friends that had a falling out at some point and then have now just like reconnected. And the only difference is Love in Other Words is a childhood friends to lovers, which is kind of, well, I guess it's childhood friends to enemies to lovers, because they have their falling out and then they are now back in the present. But it's very similar. Love in Other Words is not a vacation book, obviously. Well, sort of. She's at like a sort of like vacation house they go to on the weekends, and the neighbor is a boy who she kind of meets him because she comes to the open house with her dad, and he is just like in the closet reading, and she's like, what the heck are you doing here? And he's like, oh, I come here to read because my house is really loud and like I have all these siblings and stuff. So she kind of always is seeing him. Once they buy the house, he comes over all the time, and they turn her little closet into like a little library, and they hang out in there all together all the time. It's just really cute, and then they have their falling out, obviously. But like I said, it's written in the same way as People We Meet on Vacation, so I find that the story, sort of the way it's told, is very similar, and so I think if you liked that one, you'll definitely like this one. Next is if you like Punk 57 by Penelope Douglas, you'll like Dirty Letters by Penelope Ward and Vi Keeland. I hate the title of this book, but it is basically like a very similar idea. It's a girl and a guy who have been pen pals for years, but in this one, they sort of stop sending letters. They just, for years, they don't hear from each other. And this girl goes to clean out her dad's house after he passes, and she walks in and there's like mail there, and there's a letter from this guy that she used to pen pal with, and she's like, oh my gosh, like I totally sort of like forgot about him. And it sort of reopens this whole can of worms, and the whole story is like, you can't talk about this story without like giving away like a major plot thing that happens. But I will say, just like really read this one if you like Punk 57. It is so similar. Like I said, pen pals, they don't know each other in person, and then they finally do meet each other in person, and I really liked this whole book. It's so good. Next is if you liked Wait For You by Lynn or Jennifer L. Armentrout, you'll like Easy by Tamara Weber. I just read this one recently. It reminded me a lot of Wait For You. I will say I still love Wait For You the most, but that's because it's like my third favorite book of all time, so you can't really top that. But this one, like Easy, was very similar to that. The girl in this sort of deals with a lot of the same things that Avery was dealing with in Wait For You. And that's all I'm really going to say about this book, because this is another one again where like I don't want to say too much about what's going on, but it just had a very similar vibe, I found, to what went on in Wait For You. They're both college romances that deal with a girl who's kind of had a traumatic thing happen in her life, and the guy who kind of not is helping her. I mean, I guess in Easy he is helping her deal with it, but I don't want to like say that like, you know, the guy made everything better for her or whatever, but like the guy sort of helping her through it, I guess. And so they both sort of had that vibe going on, and I found they were very similar as well. And my last rec is that if you liked Sweet Dandelion by Micalea Smeltzer, then you'll probably like Burnout by Coralie June. These books both also have very similar vibes. They're both about a girl who moves into their brother's apartment, and they end up, both of them, dating a teacher at the high school who also lives in the same building as them. So in Sweet Dandelion, it's her guidance counselor who lives above her in an apartment on the floor above. And in Burnout, he actually lives in the apartment with her because he's her brother's best friend and his roommate. But these both just have very similar vibes with how they're like sneaking around the apartment, and every time the brother's gone, they're like hanging out, and it just reminded me a lot of each other. They're both really, really good, especially like obviously if you like teacher-student. These both are like right up that alley. And I just found that a lot of the like sneaking around and like we shouldn't be doing this but we're gonna do it anyway kind of thing that was going on was very similar, and like the brother being around all the time in the same building was just, the vibes were all the same, and I really liked both of these books. So that is everything for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button down below. I do new videos every single week, and I will see you next time.